Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this very special evening of the Tata Steel Kolkata Literary Meet in association with Birla Academy and Large Short Films. You all are gathered here, so I know that you're very excited and looking forward to this conversation. The session that we'll now have is titled Talking Life, where Javed Akhtar will be talking about gathering life and making memories with Nasreen Munni Kabir. They'll be in conversation with Sangeeta Datta. I would now like to invite all our panelists on stage and would request all of you to give them a very warm welcome.
Thank you.
A very good afternoon to all of you here. It's very exciting to be here at the Birla Academy of Arts and Culture for this particular session. Okay, a bit of thanks at the beginning. Let's thank everyone at the Kolkata Lit Meet, the organizers, the volunteers, Malavika, the director of the festival, for setting up this session and for bringing us into it. We look forward to a fascinating conversation now, and it's a great pleasure to welcome Nasreen Munni Kabir for the first time to the Kolkata Lit Fest. So welcome, Nasreen. Many of you here are aware of her work. She's been working for many, many decades on Indian cinema, and the work that she's done in the UK with series like Movie Mahal, where in the early years there was access provided to Indian cinema history, and voices and interviews that you brought in. So that's very, very pioneering work, and it's been happening for a long time. She has her own place in disseminating ideas about Indian cinema in the West. Welcome to you, Javed Saab, who's a favorite with this festival. He's here almost every year. And this year it's really a very exciting time because you've got two biographical works which have just been released.
Well, there's the difference between the two. The other book, Jadoo Nama, is mostly, it has my interview, but it is about my colleagues, my friends, my relatives, what they think of me. And this book is what I think of them.
So this is actually the third part of the trilogy. So you now have a trilogy talking films, talking songs, and now talking life. And these have all emerged, as I understand, from conversations with Javed Saab. So a question for you, Munni, because you're the writer of the book. How did this idea emerge that it's the right time for Javed Saab to look back, not just at his career or in films or scripts or songs in general, but his own life?
Well, Sangeeta, thank everybody about being here this afternoon. And actually, I did come to this festival before, Javed Saab, because we had a discussion with Zakir Hussain on the book I did with him. So this book, Talking Life, is definitely the third in the trilogy. And basically what it is that so many years had passed. We did our first book in 1999, and the second one, it was really because of Shabana ji. She wanted a book for Javed Saab's 60th birthday, and so we did Talking Songs. Then time passed again. And Javed Saab is somebody who changes and with the times and also has new perspective on the world, and so it was only natural we would try and do a third book. However, in between, COVID came, and I really do believe that there was a time of great reflection, and a great kind of internal life took over. And as Shabana ji and Javed Saab were in Khandala for all the lockdown period, I think they were thinking a lot about the past. So when we started work, it was very easy to actually start a conversation about his life.
And for you, Javed Saab, you were born into this great lineage of poets, writers, administrators, people with legal acumen in the legal profession, but a family life which was disrupted, displaced, and you had to move from one town to another. And the stories that we have in the book are pretty much about those early experiences of maybe sibling separation, parental loss, surrogate parenthood, a lot of different experiences which came to you. And as Nasreen says somewhere in the book, that the curves are huge. The curves in your life are huge. There are very low troughs and there are also great highs. And so it's an extraordinary life when we read about it here. Would you like to tell us about this early part of your life? Any memories that you'd like to share?
Well, before I get into my unhappy, traumatic childhood, I would like to make certain points at the very outset. Although Munni has said he changes with every time, that's a very ambiguous statement, and I don't know what meaning you have drawn from that, nowadays particularly. But I must say that there is a unique quality in Munni as a writer, not only in this book, in any book that she has written. Whether it is commercial writing, or cinema, or even a speech. Somehow we have come to the conclusion that either you can be sensible, in-depth, or you can be interesting. These are the choices. So more often than not, whether in cinema or in a book, fiction or non-fiction, we achieve speed at the cost of the depth. And very rarely you come across, yes, of course, I mean, perhaps the speed, tempo is needed today because the attention span, because of the technology, has shrunk to a great extent. But unfortunately, more often than not, it is at the cost of depth. And things have become, what should I say, genuinely fake and honestly untrue. So, what is her achievement as a writer? She has done a book for Lataji, with Gulzar Sahab, with me, and with few other books, Rahman. If you read any of these books, she has found a very happy marriage between depth and tempo. It's a long conversation between her and me, and I could see that she is seeing that nothing comes on a plateau. But again, her inherent sensitivity as a writer has brought that third dimension which is generally missing. It is not just incident, but something that is beyond the incident, an emotion, a feeling. That also is captured without wasting time. So I think it's a great read, and thanks to her, not me. Now comes somebody, the childhood and the beginning. Somebody asked Woody Allen. You know, when you think of it, your mind quickly goes towards Oscar Wilde. But this was Woody Allen. That, did you have a happy childhood? He said, no, a normal one. So I also had a normal childhood. And yes, I think all of us, where we are growing, that is how that's the process of growing. That you get hurt, you get disappointed, you get bruised. And that is the process of growing up. Because when you are born, the greatest man in the world is your father, and the greatest woman in the world is your mother. And gradually reality dawns upon you. And everything is hunky-dory as long as you can get the ice cream or a toy. But you realize that it's not a perfect world. Your parents are not the ultimate great people. They also have shortcomings. They are human beings, and so on. So this disappointment, there is a certain quota of hurt, bruise, and disappointments that everybody gets. But you know, when you get some kind of a high profile for one reason or other, you take those disappointments, which are so very common. I mean, they are universal. But you take them and turn them into medals across your chest. And you say, listen, do you know how unhappy my childhood was? Actually, you are not telling that. You are conceited and arrogant. You are telling that, see from here where have I come. Do you realize what a successful man I am? So I think we should take it in our stride and let's not gloat over our sorrows and our disappointments and hurts. Thank you very much.
Javed Sahab, you've been telling your life story in many formats and through many years. So even your first book had this little upbeaty at the beginning where you had a little nugget of your life. And sometimes you highlight certain incidents and sometimes certain characters are highlighted. I felt in this book you spent more time talking about your father, which you haven't done before. You've spoken more about your mother and memories about her. In this, I thought there was more retrospection about your relationship with your father.
Well, it was not a normal relationship at all because I have never lived with my father. I lived with him perhaps for a couple of years when I was 4 or 5. I do have some memories of that. I have a very good memory. I remember things from the age of 3, I suppose. So I remember that the family means mother, father, younger brother and me, 4 of us living under one roof when we were 4 and 5, but that's about all. And then I never lived with my father. So, I mean, my mother used to tell me that what a great man our father is and so on. And he was underground. There was a time when, because he was a Communist Party holder, the Communist Party was banned. So, like Shabana's father, he was also underground, and so was mine. But Shamala's father came back, my father didn't. So this is a minor difference. So we had some clothes of our father in the cupboard. So we, both little children, go and he smelled the clothes. And we used to think that this is our father's fragrance. Actually, it was the smell of cigarette and whiskey. But that I realized later. So that is how it is. You see, distance creates misunderstandings. You know, my mother died when I was 8. Next day she died. And father was a young man, I suppose in his 40s that time. And he got married again. And however modest or large-hearted I try to become. But the fact is that my stepmother, in front of my stepmother, Cinderella's mother was Mother Teresa. So anyway, that's why there was no chance to live with him. And I used to meet him once in a while. And I never used to call him after a certain age, 15, 16 years, because when I was 16 or 17, I stopped calling him Papa or Daddy or Abba or Abbi or whatever. I used to call him Akhtar Sahab, because that is how our relations were. And I think whether happily or unhappily he accepted that. But in spite of that, I will say that my meeting I remember the meeting that I had when I was in film industry, successful, unsuccessful in both the periods, I met him. And we would discuss poetry. He was a fine poet, that's for sure. And he would recite his poetry to me, and I'll point out certain things with which he would never agree, and told me many things about poetry that are very precious to me, about the technique, about the language, about the expression, about the aesthetics, quoting major poets. And I think it is his influence that my favorite poet in contemporary means 20th century poet, is Firaq Gorakhpuri. This is something that perhaps reluctantly I'll have to agree that he had given to me, and he explained to me why Firaq is such a great poet, and so on. So, I mean, these are also precious things. That is the inheritance I had, understanding of poetry, language, and respect for literature.
You've said in this book about your family belonging to this tribe of progressive writers at a certain time. What are your early memories of other writers, other poets with whom you might have interacted, or the family might
I had no idea when I was 4 or 5 that this lady, Ismat Chuktai, who was my mother's college friend, and they were very close to each other, is a big writer. I had no idea. When in a summer holiday we would go to Bombay, we would stay in her house, which was bang opposite Jai Hind College, Indus Court. The building's name was Indus Court. And then after many years, almost 50 years, Jai Hind College invited me to give a talk to the students. So I told them that there's a building right in front of your gate, and when I was 5 years old, I used to come there It has taken me 50 years to cross this road. So, but I didn't know that she's a writer. Krishna Chand, he used to stay, when he would come to Bhopal, and Bhopal was culturally and literally very active. They had a very strong progressive writers association there in Bhopal. So he would come there. He stayed with us. I had no idea that he's a writer. So I am not slightly aware of Josh Maliabadi, that he's a writer. But poets I knew, but prose writers I had no idea. I came to know about Krishna Chandra when I was perhaps 9 years old. And I knew him right from childhood, but I didn't know that he's that same Krishna Chandra who writes. So I was in Colvin Talukadars in Lucknow, and my Urdu teacher, there used to be a Urdu class also, and the Urdu teacher in Colvin and schools of UP, those were the days. So gave us, we were 10 years old, 9 years old. Subah ka manzar, the scenery, the scene in the early morning. Now who knew? I didn't know anything about early morning scenery. So we used to live on the other side of the Gomti river, and the zoo was on the opposite side. It was quite far from the, quite far means in those days Lucknow was 2 miles or 3 miles, was very far. So it was there, the zoo. It used to be called Banarsi Bagh. Our servants in the house, the cook or help, domestic help, they used to tell us that sometimes at 4 o'clock in the morning, the roar of lions can be heard here. And this was a very exciting idea for me. Although I could never get up at 4 to listen to roar of lions, but this was something very exciting. So this was my idea of the early morning. So I wrote that article that early in the morning, the roar of the lion comes from the zoos, and people whose house is nearer to the zoo, they must be hearing the sound of bears also. So this was the article I wrote. So my aunt saw this, because after when my mother died, she was the person who brought me up, and she got very upset with me. And she said, how did you write this? And who do you think you are that you can write an article like that? You are Krishna Chandra. So for the first time, I was aware of Krishna Chandra's existence, that here is somebody who can write on mornings very well. And even my aunt will approve that. So she wrote. She threw my article and she wrote herself. सुबह सुबह जब किसान अपना हल कंधे पे रख के खेतों की तरफ जाता है, तो बैलों के गले में चांदी की घंटी टन टन बजती रहती है. All life. I had no idea. I've never had seen a farmer in my life. So, but anyway, I still believe that my destroyed article was a piece of literature. This was fake.
There are many such exciting incidents in the book, Munni. I just wanted to ask you, what is your process of putting this together, of converting the conversation into a sort of, it has to have a structure somewhere.
I have to go a little bit of a backstory, because the first time I met Javed Saab and the years that followed that time, the one thing that struck me really amazingly was he could analyze anything. He was so quick. He would analyze films, he would analyze books, and the way he looked at things was really extraordinary. So the whole business of talking became very important for me, that we maintain his voice. So therefore, the idea of the conversation. Now, a conversation is not an interview, and it's not done on a dictaphone. You have it over many years. And I think this book took a long time, not just because of COVID, but I'd say 25 or 30 sessions, and an average of 1.5 hours to 2 hours each, over 3 years. And that allows you to go from layer to layer and become a bit more substantial. Why we call it an autobiographical conversation is because it's about his lifespan. It isn't about the here and now. And the process is you interview, and you then get it transcribed, then you edit it and look at it, and then see where the holes are. There are always holes. Okay, he said this very interesting thing, let's ask him to develop it. And so then you layer it and layer it. You know, in Paris, in France, there's a lovely tapestry called millefeuille, which is basically 1,000 layers. And so with Javed Sahab, there are millefeuille. There are thousands of layers. So you have to keep digging. And I'll say that this book is for this year, and I hope that somebody will do another book in 10 years and they'll find other layers. There are some people who keep giving because they think on their feet. And this is a very, very rare thing. People have to think about what they'll say. Very few people can make you laugh just like that. I saw a clip the other day on YouTube, and it was fantastic because there was a crowded thing, and he was with Gulzar Saab, and somebody's mobile rang, Sangeeta, and you heard the mobile very clearly. And what does Javed Saab do? He said, "Unko bhi mera salam dena." Now, I thought, boy, that's the way to deal with life.
A great sense of humor, yeah, of course. But Javed Sahab, when you moved to Bombay, your early years again were struggling years. And there were years when you did face homelessness and poverty. What was giving you this great self-confidence?
When I look back, it was nothing but a kind of silliness on my part. I was fool enough to be confident. There was no reason to be confident at all, the fact is. And my dress rehearsal for Bad Days had started from the age of 16. Even when I was in college, things were very tough. I was on my own. I don't think my father knew from the age of 16 to 19, and then from 19 to 25, where I lived, what's my address. He had no idea. So, what was your question?
What was giving you this self-confidence?
Yes. No. And it was totally irrational, illogical. And some kind of a delusion I had that whenever I saw some very tough time, a tough situation, on one side I was extremely worried, which was natural. On the other side, I would make a mental note that ultimately when my biography will be written, or I'll write autobiography, this will be a good passage and people will appreciate that. Honestly, you may think that I'm joking. So you have to be crazy to think like that. I was 18 years old. I was in Bhopal. Now it sounds ostensibly totally illogical, but it happened. You see, why truth is stranger than fiction? Because fiction has the complex that I'm not real. So find some logic, some reason to justify itself. Truth is not bothered. Truth knows whether you believe or you don't believe I am truth. So it can be obviously stranger than fiction. It is totally understandable. I was 18 years old, and one day I realized that I have no clothes. I have nothing to wear. Now, it sounds absurd and illogical. This boy has lived in the same world for 18 years, so obviously he was not walking naked on the street. He had some clothes. How is it possible that a boy of 18 years old realizes that he has nothing to wear? It happened to me. And on one side, I had to send some messages because I did not have access to telephone or something to my friends that said, give me some clothes. On the other side, wrapped in a bed sheet, I was sitting and thinking of this chapter in my biography. And it is true. When I walked, I did not have money for a bus ticket or a train ticket, local train ticket, and would walk for miles and miles. I think that is why I hate walking now, and I don't walk at all. When I go to the airports, I take the buggy, to fir bhi badi defied hai, wheelchair. And every time somebody takes a photograph and puts it on the social media, what has happened to him? Why is on the wheelchair? The reason is I'm lazy. That is the disease. So I would think, oh my God, I'm walking without food, without anything. Now this is the building. This will remain. So when I'll pass in my Cadillac from this place, I'll look at this building. While doing it, So this kind of a crazy optimism saw me through. Otherwise, I had no reason to be optimistic. अब वो ठीक हो गया, नहीं भी होता. Anything can happen. So there was no guarantee that things will go right. But I kept myself in this illusion, or delusion, whatever you may call, that things will become right. And these are the times which will be highlights of my biography. You have not written some of them. Have you written all of them? I hope so.
No, not all.
Let's talk about those good years. Let's talk about those years when things changed. And you've spent a considerable amount of time in this book talking about Amitabh Bachchan and how much you really tried to persuade producers to take him on and how difficult it was at the beginning. So that would be of interest to the audience.
I mean, show business all over the world, you are a man like Walt Disney, who has won more than 32 Oscars, that you are always as good as your last film. Now, I mean, with little common sense, with little eyesight, anybody could see that here is a major talent. He is a volcano waiting to burst. But his films are not doing well because they were bad. No fault of the actor. Even in those bad films, he was giving good performances. There was a picture, Raste Ka Patthar, that perhaps ran for a week. And beside the producer, I'm sure that I must be the only person in this universe who saw that film thrice. Because I could see what he is doing. Now, it was obviously an uphill task to tell people that you take him in the film, he is a great actor. There were very few people like Jaya, who became his wife. She was convinced that he's a great actor. Like Rishikesh Mukherjee. But producers were not willing. So in spite of Rishikesh Mukherjee's effort, nothing was happening. And Salim Javed. So somehow, because we were in a position where all pictures were super hits and blockbusters, we had come in a position we could decide and interfere in the final casting of the picture. And that is how these three films, Zanjeer, Diwar and Sholay, these were three achievements that how we managed to bring him in. After that, he could recommend us. He didn't need our recommendation. And then he shot up. Because it was inevitable, it had to happen with this kind of talent.
How long was the partnership with Salim Sahib?
11 years.
And has there ever been a possibility that you might work again or any discussion about it?
I shouldn't say never, because there is nothing like never. Anything can happen. But at the moment, I don't see any chance, but you never know.
And when you branched out and decided not to work together and started your own writing, your own scripts, what was the difference in your experience working alone? Because when you all were together, there was a great deal of camaraderie and you all were drinking, chatting till late.
We were not only partners, but the best critics of each other. You know, when generally the storyline used to come from him. And then we would sit and develop the screenplay together. And in a screenplay, we were not willing to surrender very easily to each other. So we would discuss every scene, and by the time the scene was finalized, nobody could say who has written this scene, who has conceived this scene, because it was really a perfect match. What happened that when I became Akela, or he became Akela, again his storylines were very good, my dialogue was very good, but we lost the best partner, both of us. The best partner and the best critic as far as the screenplay is concerned, and that reflected. I have done few successful films after parting from him. The few films which leave a lot to be desired, and they did not do well on the box office. But thankfully, at the same time, I had found a new avenue, that is of lyric writing. And I was extremely excited, and I was getting immediate gratification and good money, because the moment your song is recorded, you are paid. While in a script, the last payment is after 2 years, when the picture used to get, that time an average film used to take years to get completed. And it became very, very lucrative and very successful, and I was getting a lot of appreciation for my song. So gradually I left script writing and focused totally on that. The last script that I have written is perhaps after a long gap, was Lakshya for my son about Kargil war. Now in pandemic, because one could not socialize, couldn't go anywhere, so both of us we have a house in Khandala this way, and I wrote 2 scripts. Now I am busy trying to get best terms and conditions for that.
Munni, what would you say about this partnership between Javed Sahab and Salim Sahab? Because you've been looking and analyzing films from the early years of talkies.
Can we have some light on the audience also? I would like to see who all have dozed off. Thank you.
Yes. I think yes. Yeah, that's better. Well, in terms of this partnership between Salim and Javed, I think the real strength, when two people work together, as Javed Sahab said, they bring different strengths to the job. And what happens in this situation is that each person becomes the first audience. So if I said to you, this is a story, you're the first audience, and either you're going to accept it or not. So it's like 2 hands clapping. And if you reject the idea, it goes nowhere. And if you say the dialogue and Salim Sahab doesn't react, that's also a first audience. Just like an actor and the director's the first audience. So actually, they were both very, very, very alert and aware of what the audience would feel. This is my feeling about them. They had a real sense of the pulse of the audience. Now, Javed Sahab said something interesting about the process of writing this book, and in which he said that as far as my work is concerned, I try and keep a balance between depth and easy readability. And I think I can't compare, this is no way you can compare, but Salim Javed knew how to be deep and entertain, and understood that the audience is actually wanting both. If they just had one, like Sholay has many very comic scenes, very serious scenes, there is a balance between everything. And fantastic characterization. Their characters were fantastic with the amazing vocabulary. We have to credit Javed Sahab with that vocabulary, because the range of people talking. I asked Javed Sahab whether, in Sholay you've got so many characters, how do you choose? He really wrote each person very individually. They don't become one mush of nothing. It's everybody's individual. So that's why you see the Vijay character that Mr. Bachchan plays, or you take Sanjeev Kumar as Thakur. These, and Gabbar Singh, of course, they have remained because of their words. Frankly, even though directors are superbly important, to me the most important is the actor. Because the actor has to convey the emotion. The director's behind the camera. It's the actor who conveys it. And how does he convey it? Through words. So it's the writer and the actor.
Actor is the center forward of the team. He kicks the ball in the goal. I must add something to it. Partnership needs some mutual trust and so on. If you have a partner, you and somebody in a cement factory, there's no need to have great mental rapport. You know what is the price of the raw material. You know how much money it takes to turn that raw material into cement. You know what is the rate of cement in the market, and so on. So if you have a decent formal relation with a partner, maybe not a very warm one, but courteous and civilized, the company can run. So about textile, iron, steel, whatever. But how do you work on a script? There is no scale, there is no weighing machine to know whether this scene is right or wrong. You need tremendous mental rapport. What happens that when two people start working, obviously they are nobodies, so nobody is interested in them. So they have each other and they spend all the time together. But as they go up, people get interested in them. And gradually, whatever was latent in the personalities, because that time only work was important and that was the lifeline. So now you get slightly relaxed and you indulge in your other aspects also. And it happens sooner or later, you become apart. You develop your own group of friends where you are interested in different things besides this main work, and the other person also does. And gradually in this process, that mental rapport goes away. This complete rapport. But that is why you can run a factory. You can run a corporate office. Stock exchange, you can work even in stock exchange. But you can't write a screenplay together if you don't have complete trust. I mean, there was a time, it may sound rather exaggerated to you, but believe me, it's true, that we are sitting and we get stuck. And he would say, now I feel we will have to use that kind of a scene, and I would say, you're right, that will work here. Without asking him what he is going to say. And he was surprised. How do you know what I'm going to say? And I understood. And it happened both ways. So that kind of rapport was gone. I developed my own circle, my own friends. I was interested in Urdu poetry. I was not interested, although in my childhood I had learned a lot about poetry. But then when it was this matter of life and death, I was only interested in my career as a scriptwriter. I was not interested in any social or political issue. Believe me, when we were writing films, emergency came and went away. I hardly noticed it. Matlab, limit of indifference or what it is, a particular word in Sanskrit, koop manduk, a frog in a well. So that is what we were. But then the frogs became big, came out of the well, and then when they came out of the well, they had different directions to move. They felt free, privileged, and that is where that rapport goes away.
So you talked about turning towards songwriting, writing songs. Was it the same time that you started writing your own poetry, or had you already started?
I think there is a difference of 2 to 3 years. I started writing poetry perhaps in 78 and wrote the first song in 81. So because I had done a lot of work with Mr. Yash Chopra, the famous producer-director. I had done films with him, Trishul, Diwar, and then ultimately Mashal. I used to write, I had started writing poetry in 78, but I would never send it to a magazine or paper or anywhere. It was only for a very small circle, like Mr. Hari Vanshrai Bachchan, who was Amitabh Bachchan Sahab's father. I used to recite my poetry to him, take his opinion. Dr. Rahima Sumraza, who himself was a very good poet, and he was a dialogue writer and used to live nearby, so I would go to his house, narrate my poetry to him. Sometimes he would come. Then Yash Chopra, because Yash Chopra has had an understanding of poetry, and his songs also used to be poetic, not regular film songs, so on. So he knew that I write poetry. And one day he landed at my place and he said that I'm making a film. Sahir Saab is not available because he's not well and he's not interested in writing songs anymore. I want you to write it. My hero is a poet. I don't want to take a regular songwriter. I want you to write. I tried to dissuade him. I put all unreasonable conditions and he accepted everything. So I had no choice. So it was decided that I'll write his songs. And I went to his house. They had a big sitting room, and that is where I met Shiv and Hari. I went there at about 10:30, and he had a tune. The song was written to the tune, not only for the situation. And by 5, when I left his house, the song was written there. I wrote there then and there. Dekha hai khwab to ye silsile hue. So that was my first song. And after 50 years, I am getting real appreciation of that song. But better late than never. Okay. So, but I enjoyed doing that. So then I started writing. Then my songwriting also took a dip, at a very sharp dip. In 2005, Filmfare nominates 5 people and ultimately one person gets the award. All 5 nominations were of my songs. In 2000, by the end of 2006, I had no film. Because meanwhile, I had stood up for the rights of the lyricists and composers for the royalty. And nobody, including Pandit Ravi Shankar, to me, no one used to get royalty in this country. No composer, no musician, no writer, lyricist. Not that they were not there, the rights were there in the constitution. But you could surrender your right to the producer or the music company, and that is what they used to do. They used to take away all the rights. And I fought against that, and I knew that no individual will be able to fight with this cartel. So I wanted the very law to change. And thankfully, that was the time that they nominated me to Rajya Sabha, and that is what in 6 years I achieved, that I got the law of the land changed. And today, every musician, every lyricist, whether in Bengal or in Tamil Nadu or in Odisha or in Telangana or in Bombay, gets royalties. But they punished me. They stopped giving me work. Now slowly they are coming back.
That's what I was going to ask. Things are changing now again.
Yeah.
And you're also working for the music streaming apps and banking new songs.
Yeah.
So it's a busy time.
Yeah. Shankar Mahadevan doesn't need an introduction. And I have formed a company which will be launched in March, April, May, somewhere. May perhaps. Gunguna Lo. And all the musicians, all the singers, all the writers were there sold, like Kaushiki ji from Calcutta, and so many people have become the members, the minimum shareholders of the company. The minimum share that you buy is in 5 lakhs and more, however money you want to invest in that company. And the condition is that if you are the creative member, you have to put 4 original music works or poetry works every year on the line. That's all. And the major lion's share of the royalty that will come, or the money that we'll make in downloading, will go to the person who has made the song, and rest of the 40%, 20% will go to the company to run it, and 20% will be distributed in the rest of the creative shareholders according to their shares. So everybody has become member, and that will give us no condition what you want to make. So that will give artists tremendous creative freedom. And they don't have to explain it to any music company or any film producer. They can do whatever they feel like. And I think this will be accepted in a very big way by the society.
Javed Saab, before I open this out to the house and to the audience.
I want light there. There is no light.
We'll get the light there.
Darkness. वो light थी ना पहले कहाँ गई?
It's hurting their eyes.
अरे यहाँ नहीं, पीछे तो करो. I have no wife there.
So before we open this out, I had one question for you, Javed Saab. Somewhere here in the book, again, you talk about the process of creativity, and you talk about the conscious mind, the pre-conscious and the subconscious. You also talk about the mind having different chambers. And quite often, even in our conversations, you've talked about this concept of different chambers in your brain or in your mind. Something could be a formal drawing room, there could be attics, there could be hidden rooms, and it's a very intriguing sort of concept.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about that?
I would like to tell you something to all of you, and particularly to Shabana, because this is something that we have discussed many times. Shabana, when I was coming here, so I was just going through different titles on the YouTube, and I found a scientist, most probably a Japanese, was talking about what has happened now. It has happened. You can download memory and you can, what is the opposite of download? Upload memory. This is something we have been talking about since quite a few years, that we believe that someday it will happen, that you will be able to download memory and upload. What does it mean? It's the first major step towards turning your body into a shirt, because you are ultimately your mind. What else you are? That repertoire, that whole record of memories and feelings and thoughts is you. You are not your arms, legs. If all that repertoire is transferred to another head, you will be sitting there in the other body. So your body will be as important as your shirt. You will be in your cupboard, you will have many bodies. You will come from the office, this body is tired, you will transfer yourself to a fresh body, go to the club, come back. Tomorrow morning you have to play tennis, so you have that body which has exercised better, and so on. Sound absurd, but ultimately it's a matter of few years, or perhaps a couple of decades, it will happen. It has started happening. And this is something I really believe that it is inevitable. It has to happen. You see, we know that light has rays. We know that sound has rays. What is memory? Now, whatever I'm saying, you're listening. How, I hope, that how it is recorded in your neurons. How? Does it have waves? What is the process? This is something we have been trying to understand, and maybe they have to some extent. The moment you understand how memory is recorded, you can download and upload it, because you know the process, and it is happening. The world we are seeing, the human beings we are seeing, they are not going to be the same. I'm not the only one who's changing. So it will happen.
Okay, I'm going to steal one more question before we open this out, because Shabana is sitting right here in front, and it's very special to talk about this book with Shabana in front of you. And you've said such wonderful things about how your own world, the Kupu Manduk that you were, or the frog in the well, how that world has expanded since the time Shabana has come into your world.
That's true. That's true. I wish she wouldn't have been here, so I could tell you even in more detail. Now you're saying he's so scared that he is saying it. But the fact is that, you see, actually whatever English I speak, thanks to her. I could read English, I could write English, but I had no facility for speaking like any common UPN. My education was not in Urdu, initial education. I started writing English only in the college. Otherwise, in the school, my medium was Urdu. And then what happened, that when I came out that Koop Manduk, that Manduk, and Koop, Manduk means Mendak, frog. So when I came out, what was my another circle? There was a bigger circle, but not too big. That was Urdu literature, Urdu poets, Urdu writers, and many of them were my friends of my uncle or mother or my father and so on. So Krishna Chandra, Ismat Chugtai, Sardar Jafri, Rahi, Masoom Raza, I was in that circle. But when I met Shabana, I jumped another circle because of her, because she was out of that. On one hand, she was Kafi Azmi's daughter, so obviously she was familiar with Urdu poetry, and she knew all these people whom I have named now. But on the other hand, by the virtue of the fact that she was a convent-educated girl, and then she had gone to Xavier's, she had different, and her interests, her concerns were much ahead of only poetry, like the slums, the women empowerment, so on and so forth. Although I'll say, to be honest, right from the beginning, I have been against male chauvinism, but I got a platform through her. I realized that I cannot break that glass ceiling till I cannot speak English fluently. So I learned English not in the college, not by a teacher. I learned English by listening to my wife. And this is a fact. This is a fact because...
Sorry, was it just words or the meaning behind them?
The meaning taught me about life and words taught me English. And then her circle, her activist friends and her friends from different universities and so on and so forth, I didn't know them that time. I was in Aligarh where there was a university, there were people, but I had left all of them behind. Now my circle didn't have those kind of people. Now today, now my friends are her friends actually. I don't have many friends whom I can call my friends. My friends were from my college, from my school. And then my circle is actually her circle. And all of them are English-speaking people. So I had no choice but to learn.
We'll take some questions from the audience. Okay, we start with you up here. Do we have microphones for them?
इनको देना है? Okay. While asking the question, you better remember that you are sitting in the same line my wife is. So I am a person there. So now you ask me what you want to ask.
I'm already shivering. I hope this doesn't sound very stupid as a question, but I sincerely want to know, even a writer as marvelous as you, when writers say they think in words, do they actually really think in words? Do they see, absorb, understand, process, and then does it all come out in words?
Everybody thinks in words. You cannot think without words. Not possible. You can feel.
That's what I mean.
You can feel hurt. You can feel cold, hot, and so on. If somebody puts an ember on your skin, of course you will feel the pain. So on. But you cannot have a thought without words. That's not possible. All of us think in words.
What is an instinct then?
Instinctively you can react, but where's the word? Like if a child sees something dangerous, the child moves away from it. According to child's perception, this is dangerous. Whatever. You are programmed for self-protection. You are programmed for procreation. You are programmed to find food. That is instinct, which is in the animals. But do they think? And if they think, do they have a language which we don't know? This is a serious question. How can you think without words? One. Now, how a writer collects so many words, his vocabulary or her vocabulary, how it becomes so big and varied, particularly if the writer is a non-fiction writer and writes plays or films or theatre, because they are different characters and every character has, like she mentioned, has own style of speaking. You know, whatever vocation you have, when somebody enters, say, a building, an architect will look at the building, where are the pillars, where are the slabs, how they have given space to the lobby, and so on and so forth. When the interior decorator will enter that same lobby, will look at the furniture that is placed there and note the curtains and the sofas and the color of the sofa and the table. They should not be, it should have been a square table. Why have they put a round table there? So on. So everybody looks at things from whatever vocation or occupation we have. We'll look at the things. The same way about the life. When we move in life in the world, the author, the writer whose profession is in words, these are the words are to him what colors are to a painter. So the moment a painter will get a new shade of color, he'll quickly understand this is a good shade and this should be used. The same way, the moment writer hears a good metaphor, good simile, good word, good expression, it goes in his repertoire. And it may come handy after 10 years, but it is lying there because that is his That is his job. So gradually, if you have your eyes and ears open, you keep on collecting that. Incidents, you remember that. And I'm very impressed by my daughter, Zoya. Here is a girl who was brought up at Bandstand in a bungalow, used to go to London or to US in her holidays. And how did she observe characters of a slum? By going there for 2-3 months, visiting families and talking to young boys and so on. So this is the talent of a writer that quickly, another great writer that I was mentioning to you, Quratul and Heather, she was born in an aristocratic family, a very rich, privileged family. But when she writes about poor women, lower middle class women, there are stories that I have read many times and every time I have cried. How could she could understand that pain, that ambience, that atmosphere, that helplessness, that makes them writers. That's why they are writers. That they absorb like a blotting paper.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Shall we take this question here?
Hello, am I audible? Thank you, sir. I love you. And thank you for Laksh. It has been a major source of inspiration for us. And
Look, what he is saying. हाँ बोलिए साहब चलिए अब जो भी है.
Thanks for Laksh. And it's I love the poem since Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara.
Thank you.
I have just a question. Can you share your experience meeting Satyajit Ray? You came to the city and met him. I saw a picture of yours with him. So is there anything you took up from his career and applied into yours?
I must tell you, I was totally overawed. I hardly spoke when I met him. Shabana had more informal relations with him because she has worked with him. But for me, it was, asking somebody, when you saw Taj Mahal, how did you react? And did you find any fault in Taj Mahal? So for me, he was so big and so monumental that I was totally overawed. But I must tell you one thing. Only he could afford to say that. There was in 1976, there was a debate, you may say, or say a panel. And Mr. Satyajit Ray was on that panel. And there are 2-3 very important journalists were there. And I'm forgetting the Amita Malik. I think her name was Amita Malik, a very important journalist. And while they were talking about films, Amita Malik said something not very flattering about Sholay, because it was released in 75. She said, look at the picture, this is the kind of film we are making. And Mr. Ray contradicted her on the record. He says that you are wrong. Sholay is a very good film and I'm proud that now people are making film like Sholay in India. I totally understand Mr. Ray and I totally understand Amita Malik also. You see, our intellectuals are still not confident enough of themselves, of their intellect. You know, in British National Museum, you have Shakespeare, you have Milton, you have Blake, you have Shaw, you have Oscar Wilde, anybody. And in that same hall, there is one more case, glass case, and you have Paul McCartney's Yesterday, written in his own hand. That shows the confidence of the nation and the confidence of the intellectual of that country, that he is willing to own Paul McCartney without thinking that there will be a question mark in front of his intellect. Our people have to take a little more time. But Mr. Satyajit Ray had no fear. He was much above that. So he could afford to praise it, not this journalist. It was not possible for her.
Thank you, sir.
We'll take your question.
Javed sir, I just wanted to ask you, what is it like working with your children? How do you have disagreements? Do they bully you? Do they listen to you? How does it work? And I'd like you to talk about Farhan and Zoya separately.
Yeah, of course. You can work with your children if you can temporarily forget that they are your children. Point one. But the problem is that they don't forget. They know that they can bully the father. But why only my children? I have worked with many directors and producers who were the children of my friends with whom I had worked earlier, whether Mr. Yash Chopra's son or Mr. Yash Jauhar's son, and so on. Many people. I had worked with their fathers, and now after that I worked like Sunny. I worked with Dharamji, and then I worked for Sunny also. But there has to be correct value system. We believe that anybody who was born after us has less wisdom than us. Now we don't give this margin to people who were born before us, that they are wiser because they were born before. No. They are outdated. These people have yet to understand the world. We are the wise people. If we have this attitude, we cannot work with the seniors and we cannot work with the juniors. If we realize, and genuinely, not as a policy, you will be caught if you are manipulating that. This should be your real value system and belief that actually now this world belongs to these young people. I am overstaying here, it doesn't matter. So they know a lot that I don't know. But the fact is that I also know many things that they don't know. If this mutual respect is there, I think we can produce very good work, because I learn something from them and they will learn something from me. And that synthesis will be fantastic. So when these people, sometimes they are not too willing, but the producer wants me in the film and so on. But within a couple of sittings, they relax. They realize that I'm not going to show off that how many birthday cakes I have cut. So once they are relaxed, then we start working. Some of them, once they have worked with me, then there is no problem. But I understand their apprehension. Many people who will get slightly scared. अरे भाई हमें लाइन ठीक नहीं लगी तो हम इनसे कैसे बोलेंगे, ये तो हमें बताएंगे, तुम्हें पता है तुम पैदा नहीं हुए थे तब मैंने वो गाना लिखा था, ये so on so forth, which many people do. So once they realize that it's not going to happen, then they relax. And genuinely, I learned that because however contemporary modern you try to be, there are some residues of olden years within your thinking and your vocabulary. And when the person points out that this word is slightly outdated, think, not that agree immediately, but give a fair thought, objective thought to it, and then either you convince the person or the person will convince you. But you should be open to suggestion.
संगीता जी, 1 minute. Last, before we finish the questions, जावेद साहब, आपके वक्त कुछ सुना दीजिए, वक्त पोइट्री से, वो तो कंप्लीट हो जाएगी फिर.
ठीक है, अब आप क्वेश्चन अगर बंद कर दे तो
नहीं नहीं.
तो लास्ट
Can we take the boy at the back in a blue shirt? Bolo? Yeah.
I was caught by surprise. Javed Saab, I cannot tell you how your importance in my life, but just to keep it short, the question, like recently there's this clip of your book launch and Gulzar Saab and you had this one interaction, and I just want to know your side of the story that he shared, that डर था वो कम वक़्त मुझसे अच्छा लिखता है. Could you tell your side of that story and how you felt in that moment when he was talking about you?
You know, when he said that, मुझे शक था कि ये कम वक्त मुझसे अच्छा लिखता है, that should tell you only one thing. One thing, that how confident he is of his writing. That he can afford to say that. That is all. There is no other meaning. It only shows his high self-esteem and total self-confidence.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Javed Saab, first of all, thank you for being born. And I think it's a privilege for me to be present here and listen to you. And the fact that you have been honored with the prestigious Richard Dawkins Award really fills our heart with pride and joy. A lot of your followers, including me, really wanted to know about your thoughts on the philosophy of Osho Rajneesh. So Your thoughts on that, sir?
Thoughts about?
Osho Rajneesh, philosophy of Osho Rajneesh. Osho.
He was a fantastic orator. When I used to be in a Blue Diamond Hotel that was in Koregaon, and his ashram was also just behind the hotel. So I used to go there to write dialogue and be there for 25 days, 20 days. My average is from 20 to 25 days I write the dialogue of a script. So early at 8, he used to start a parivachan that was hour and a half till 9:30. Every morning I used to go and listen to him. I have heard him live. And I remember because he was almost, his prose was almost like a poetry. So I remember many paragraphs and many major parts of his lectures by heart. I can narrate to you. But it is not that he had one particular philosophy that he was preaching. Today he is talking about Ashvikar ki Gita. Tomorrow he would be talking about, and he would say, oh, no, Veds are not relevant now. This Gita is, Ashvikar Gita is relevant. Then when after 1 month he's giving a series of lectures on Ved, then he tells they are the ultimate wisdom, or all these books are useless. So he would change his statement. But it doesn't matter. One had not gone to find any, I never went there to find the cult or to find how I'll get nirvana and so on. I was listening to a very learned man who was very educated and a very good orator. And he was actually a kind of a spiritual lawyer. He used to take different cases and win them.
Okay, this is going to be the last question. Can I have the mic to this girl here in blue?
But then she, and one more there.
Okay, so then we'll have to take some questions.
जावेद साहब, मैं हिंदी में बोलूँगा.
बोलिए हिंदी में. मैं भी
यही दोस्त है मेरा जो कि इंग्लिश बोलता है.
मैं भी तरस गया हूँ हिंदी बोलने.
वही सर.
जल्दी बोलिए. जी.
सर मैं थोड़ा नीचे काँप रहा हूँ, बैठ जाऊँ इधर साइड में.
आप बैठ जाइए, बैठ के बोलिए.
सर एक आपके जो दोस्त हैं जिन्होंने जादूनामा लिखा है, वो एक बात बोलते हैं कि जावेद साहब के लाइफ में टाइमिंग गजब की है. सब चीज़ मतलब टाइमिंग से होता है. ऐसी लक है, ऐसी टाइमिंग है. मेरे साथ भी आज कुछ वैसा ही हुआ. छोटा सा मतलब सवाल से आने से पहले मैं शेयर करना चाहूँगा. सेमेस्टर का एग्ज़ाम चल रहा है मेरा. मैं इंस्टाग्राम अनइंस्टॉल करने वाला था कि डिस्ट्रैक्शन नहीं होगा. लास्ट टाइम खोला तो मैम का पोस्ट था कि जावेद साहब कलकत्ता आ रहे हैं. और मैं मतलब पहले तो विश्वास नहीं हुआ. मैं सपना देख रहा हूँ ललन टॉप का, वो आपका इंटरव्यू देख रहा था. लगातार 2-3 बार देख लिया. मुझे लगा कि सपने में हूँ मैं. फिर मैं गया, नहाया हुआ है. फिर मैं क्वेश्चंस का लिस्ट बनाने लगा. नहाते वक्त शावर हो रहा है और मैं लिस्ट बना रहा हूँ. लेकिन अब उसमें से पूरा लिस्ट बना हुआ है मेरे मोबाइल में, लेकिन नहीं पूछूंगा आपको, कभी बाद में मौका मिलेगा तो. एक सर थोड़ा सा हल्का सा पॉलिटिकल होगा. आपका एक ड्रीम था कि लक्षद्वीप एक तरफ, अंडमान एंड निकोबार एक तरफ, ये इंडिया के दुबई और सिंगापुर होने चाहिए. और वो जो आइलैंड है उसको हम काफ़ी ज़्यादा यूटिलाइज कर सकते हैं अपना इकोनॉमी बढ़ाने में, टूरिज़्म बढ़ाने में, और ओवरऑल पूरा इकोनॉमी डेवलप करने में. और आपने इस पे जोर भी दिया था. आप बता रहे थे आप कई सारे मंत्रियों से मिले थे इसके लिए, लेकिन कोई ज़्यादा ध्यान दिया नहीं. कल इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स में एक आर्टिकल आया था कि अंडमान निकोबार में, निकोबार का जो एरिया है उसमें कुछ पैसे इन्वेस्ट किए जा रहे हैं. अगले 20 साल में एक एयरपोर्ट बनेगा, एक सी डॉकयार्ड बनेगा और टूरिज़्म को बढ़ावा मिलेगा. फिर लेकिन उसके बदले में कुछ इन्वायरमेंटलिस्ट, शायद कहते हैं ना इन्वायरमेंटलिस्ट, मतलब जो पर्यावरण देखते हैं, बोलते हैं कि नहीं नहीं गलत है, तो वो लोग आ जा रहे हैं, बोल रहे हैं कोरल रीफ ख़राब हो जाएगा, कई सारे पशु पक्षी ये लोग दिक्कत जाएगा. तो इस पे आपका क्या टेक है सर? क्योंकि आप तो दोनों आइलैंड्स को बोल रहे थे सुपर डेवलप करने के लिए, एक तरफ दुबई एक तरफ सिंगापुर, यही आपका लफ्ज था कि इंडिया के दोनों तरफ.
जी. अब ये तो ऐसे ही हवाई किले बना रहे हैं. जो पीपल हु आर इन पावर दे विल डिसाइड व्हाट विल हैपन. ये एक आइलैंड तो है नहीं, 2 आइलैंड नहीं. ये आइलैंड जैसे यहाँ पर जो आर्चिपेलागो है अंडमान निकोबार का, कुछ 700 आइलैंड्स हैं उसमें. एंड 30 या 35 में कुछ लोग रहते हैं. रेस्ट ऑफ दम आर टोटली डेजर्ट,
वो लिखा हुआ है।
अरे तो भाई उसमें अगर 4-5 आइलैंड जो आसपास में उन्हें कनेक्ट करके ब्रिजेस से एक बना लेते हो तो फिर भी सैकड़ों आइलैंड वहाँ पर होंगे जो जिनकी आप पर्यावरण की सुरक्षा कीजिए। एक्चुअली कोई भी एक्सट्रीम स्टैंड किसी भी चीज़ में कभी सही नहीं होता। अफकोर्स एनवायरनमेंट की केयर होनी ही चाहिए, मगर डेवलपमेंट भी होना चाहिए। और इसमें एक बैलेंस अगर आप पैदा कर लें कि जहाँ एनवायरनमेंट भी है और कुछ थोड़ा सा सेक्रीफाइस भी। एक सड़क, शहर से दूसरे सड़क तक आपको हाईवे चाहिए कि नहीं चाहिए?
बिल्कुल चाहिए। क्यों?
वो हाईवे बिना थोड़ा बहुत एनवायरनमेंट को डैमेज किए बन ही नहीं सकता।
बिल्कुल नहीं बन।
तो ये भी रियलिटी है। लेकिन अब आप ये कीजिए कि जहाँ से हाईवे गुजरा वहाँ सारे पेड़ काट के वहाँ मॉल्स बनाना शुरू कर दीजिए, वहाँ पर थिएटर, दैट इज़ रॉन्ग। फैक्ट्रीज बनाना शुरू कर दिए। तो एक बैलेंस रहे दोनों में। ये भी जो है इतने दोनों तरफ जो है आइलैंड आर हंड्रेड्स ऑफ आइलैंड, तो कुछ आइलैंड चुन के आप, और ये मेन जो कमर्शियल रूट है इनकी शिप्स की, उस पे हैं ये दोनों। ये अंदर दुबई तो अंदर जाके है, गल्फ के अंदर जाके।
यस करेक्ट।
ये सामने है
बिल्कुल बीच में।
क्यों? व्हाई कांट यू हैव अ सिंगापुर ऑन वन साइड एंड दुबई ऑन द अदर साइड? नाउ दे विल नॉट बी इन द मेनलैंड, so you can control them also. If there is a casino, you should have a permit. Even Indians should be able to go only by the getting a permit and so on. You can control it. You can make them free ports, and those two will be the lungs of Indian economy. तो मगर बैलेंस रखो। अच्छा, इन्वायरमेंट वहाँ चिंता कर रहे हो, यहाँ देखो इन्वायरमेंट का क्या हाल है, थोड़ा इधर भी कर लो।
सर एक बात याद आ गया, मुझे क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछने दिया जा रहा था, तो आपने एक बार और बताया था कि नेहरू जी आए थे कहीं पे और आपको ऑटोग्राफ लेना था, कैसे भी लेना था, तो आप कूद करके और फिर उनके पास गए थे ऑटोग्राफ लेने। तो मैं तो सोचा था लास्ट में से
वो अच्छे दिन थे।
हाँ, मैं सोच रहा था यहाँ से कूद के चला जाता, पूछ लेता। एक कुर्सी
वो दिन गए। आपने देखा खड़े वो सिक्योरिटी के लोग। जी कहिए, बस लास्ट क्वेश्चन अब ये।
Two people have stood up there.
So, जावेद साहब, मेरा सवाल आपसे है, तो शायरी लिखने का सही तरीका क्या है?
आप लिखना चाहते हैं?
नहीं, लिखते हैं।
अच्छा, तो आप पूछ रहे हैं?
जी, ताकि सही तरीका क्या है, ताकि अपने आप को बेहतर बना सके।
पढ़िए, जितनी पोइट्री पढ़ सकें पढ़िए, और बाय हार्ट आपको होनी चाहिए पोइट्री। ओनली देन यू विल नो द रिदम ऑफ लैंग्वेज, यू नो द म्यूजिक ऑफ वर्ड्स, फोनेटिक्स, यू विल अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज मीटिंग, व्हाट इज वेटेज एंड सो ऑन। पढ़िए, लिखना बाद में। Read poetry for few. You are a young man, you can afford to do that.
Yeah.
For 3-4 years, read all kind of poetry.
सर, आपसे एक गुजारिश है।
जी।
Can we have you as a guest in our college?
वो देखेंगे, आप मुझे लिखिएगा, यहाँ से ले लीजिएगा मेरा ईमेल, कब बुलाना चाहते हैं वो देखिए। अभी इस बार तो पॉसिबल नहीं है। टुमारो वी आर लीविंग। जी मैडम।
नमस्ते जी।
नमस्ते।
My question is also, hello. Yeah, I am from Bhavanipur Education Society and they are all my students here. And on behalf of all of them, and perhaps it's especially on my question only, like I want to ask you that, and this is in relation to again that same conversation you had with Guljar Saab, and we read it in the news a few days back. There was a very funny snippet. Guljar ji had mentioned that whenever he reads your iconic एक लड़की को देखे तो at every end of every stanza he feels you are writing about a different girl. And Shabana ji being sitting here, I just want to know the real answer from you. Was it the same girl you were writing about in different stanzas?
You are contradicting yourself. You are saying Shabana ji is sitting here and I want the real answer. No, but let me tell you, I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's a very, very sad story how this song was written. It's a very disappointing, unromantic story. You see, when I heard the script, I said there should be a song here. The director did not agree with me, Vinod Chopra. He said, यहाँ कैसे होगा? They have not met, they hardly know each other. He just got a glimpse of the girl and now he's looking for her. There is no relationship, no romance between the two. And you are saying there can be a song here. I said, my instinct says that there can be a very good song here. So R.D. and others, all of them were sitting there. They said, Acha, theek hai, you go and write the song. If it's a good song, we will take it. We have no problem. So when do we meet again? On Wednesday at 4 o'clock. It's fine. I came out of that place from R.D. Burman's music room and very conveniently forgot about it. Now came Wednesday. And at about 3, somebody reminded me that, sir, आ जाइएगा, कुछ लोग तो already आ गए हैं, तो 4 बजे sharp आ जाइएगा. Come exactly at 4. And that message reminded me that I had to give them a song, which I had not written. I was so embarrassed because the whole unit was coming to listen to this great piece of art, literature, which I had not written. So when I was going, I was thinking, how do I save my face? And I even remember the spot where I was. This thought came to me. I said, okay, I'll get away. So I entered. All of them were sitting, Anil Kapoor and R.D. Burman and Swapan Chakravarti, who was his chief assistant, and Vidhu Vinod Chopra. I said, listen, for 3 days I have been thinking about it. And I have found a very novel idea. The first line will be, Ek ladki ko dekha to aisa laga. And now the whole song will have only similes, nothing else. If it is acceptable to you, then I'll write. So R.D. said, okay, write the first antara, first stanza, right here. He knew I write very quickly. So I sat down in a corner and I wrote the first stanza, which is the first stanza of the song, right there in 15-20 minutes to save my skin. And I gave it to him, he played it, he said, fine, give me 2 more stanzas like that, I don't want anything else. So later I wrote 2 stanzas. So if I had remembered that I have to write a song, then I would have never written Ek ladki ko dekha to aisa laga.
But magic, you created magic by that song, and it is still one of the best romantic songs of Bollywood for my generation and for my children's generation.
Well, I don't see any
Big
reason.
hand, big hand for that.
I don't see any reason to disagree with you. Okay, fine.
So it's only suitable that we end this session with a poem from you, Javed Saab.
Okay. ये वक्त क्या है? ये क्या है आखिर कि जो मुसलसल गुजर रहा है? ये जब न गुजरा था तब कहाँ था? कहीं तो होगा. गुजर गया है तो अब कहाँ है? कहीं तो होगा. कहाँ से आया, किधर गया है? ये कब से कब तक का सिलसिला है? ये वक्त क्या है? ये वाक़ये, हादसे, तसादुम, these incidents, these accidents, these conflicts, every sorrow, every happiness, every pleasure, every pain, ये वाक़ये, हादसे, तसादुम, हर एक गम और हर एक मसरत, हर एक अज़ियत, हर एक लज्जत, हर एक नगमा, हर एक खुशबू, वो ज़ख्म का दर्द हो कि वो लम्स का हो जादू, खुद अपनी आवाज़ हो कि माहौल की सदाएं, ये जहन में बनती और बिगड़ती हुई फ़िज़ाएं, वो फ़िक्र में आए ज़लज़ले हों कि दिल की हलचल, तमाम एहसास, सारे जज्बे, all the feelings, all the emotions, ये जैसे पत्ते बहते पानी की सतह पर जैसे तैरते हैं, अभी यहाँ है, अभी वहाँ है और अब है ओझल, दिखाई देता नहीं है लेकिन ये कुछ तो है जो कि बह रहा है. ये कैसा दरिया है, किन पहाड़ों से आ रहा है, ये किस समंदर को जा रहा है, ये वक्त क्या है? कभी कभी मैं सोचता हूँ कि चलती गाड़ी से पेड़ देखो तो ऐसा लगता है दूसरी समझ जा रहे हैं. कभी कभी मैं सोचता हूँ कि चलती गाड़ी से पेड़ देखो तो ऐसा लगता है दूसरी समझ जा रहे हैं, मगर हकीकत में पेड़ अपनी जगह खड़े हैं. तो क्या ये मुमकिन है सारी सदियां कतार अंदर कतार अपनी जगह खड़ी हो, ये वक्त साकित हो और हम ही गुजर रहे हो? इस एक लम्हे में सारे लम्हे, तमाम सदियां छुपी हुई हो, न कोई आइंदा न गुज़िश्ता। जो हो चुका है वो हो रहा है, जो होने वाला है हो रहा है। मैं सोचता हूँ कि क्या ये मुमकिन है सच्चे हो के सफ़र में हम हैं, गुज़रते हम हैं, जिसे समझते हैं हम गुज़रता है वो थमा है, गुज़रता है या थमा हुआ है, इकाई है या बटा हुआ है मुंजमद या पिघल रहा है, किसे खबर है, किसे पता है ये वक्त क्या है?
Thank you so much for that, Javed Saab. We are being asked to conclude this session. So thanks again to all of you, the audience. Thanks to you, Javed Saab and Munni. And there will be a book signing after this.